Saira had always been exceptional, born into a family of moderate means, but rising to become a respected senior doctor before the age of 30. She was a gifted painter, to her canvases once vibrant with color, capturing delicate still lifes and portraits full of warmth. Her intellect was matched by her presence, and her life seemed destined for greatness. But fate, as it often does in the darkest tales, had other plans. Her marriage was brief. A miscarriage robbed her of her child, and within months, her husband remarried, leaving her shattered. She returned to her mother's home, once a confident, independent woman, now burdened by silence and grief. Over time, she found solace in religion, adopting a life of seclusion and intense devotion. She began wearing the veil, giving sermons at her hospital, and was known among peers for her spiritual wisdom. She even claimed that in her dreams, she had seen the prophet, and many believed her to be blessed. But one day, almost without warning, everything changed. She discarded the veil. Her style returned, but her spirit did not. Arguments became frequent, irrational. Her temper was explosive. When angered, her already pale skin turned a sickly white, her lips almost blue, her eyes devoid of focus. She painted again, but the images were no longer beautiful. They were haunting. A girl with no mouth, children hanging upside down, dark figures standing behind smiling faces. Her walls became a gallery of torment. Then the house began to change. It was always cold, dark even during the day. Visitors often mentioned a foul smell, like rotting earth and burnt hair. Faucets turned on and off on their own. Shadows seemed to linger in corners longer than they should. Her room became a forbidden place, always locked, its only light a single red bulb that cast the space in a blood-like glow. One afternoon, she collapsed without cause, no warning, no illness. At the hospital, she slipped into a coma. 3 months passed. Her body withered. Strange marks appeared on her skin, bruises, scratched like wounds, but no one could explain them. Medical reports were blank, yet she remained unresponsive. Then, just as suddenly, she woke up. Doctors were baffled. Every test was normal. She spoke little, claimed no memory of pain. But later, in whispers to her cousin, she revealed her truth. For 90 days, she said, she had been chained in a dark dreamscape. A figure, tall, horned, eyes like coals, tormented her daily. She cried, begged, pleaded, but no help came, until a man of light appeared in a dream, fought the dark being, and set her free. She said the entity that haunted her was none other than Iblis himself. After this, Saira stopped being Saira. She abandoned her phone, deleted her social accounts. She refused to bathe, barely ate, and no longer prayed. She locked herself in her room day and night, speaking to no one. When family members approached, she would simply stare. No emotion, no anger, just silence. The red light always glowed behind the door. One night, her younger cousin, visiting with her mother, needed the bathroom. The usual one was occupied, so she tiptoed towards Saira's room, noticing the door was ajar. Inside, the air was heavy, and only the hallway's green light faintly lit the space. Saira was nowhere to be seen. As she turned toward the attached bathroom, her eyes fell on a painting hanging crooked on the wall. A girl with her mouth sewn shut, long, tangled hair, eyes bleeding, nails digging into her own scalp. She stood frozen, unable to look away. It felt like the painting was breathing. Then quiet, a shift in the air. She turned. Saira stood behind her, hair undone, no expression, just watching. The cousin screamed and fainted. It should have been the end, but it wasn't. Weeks passed. Then night came. The family gathered again. Saira joined them briefly, sitting silently, assembling her plate, and turning the television on at full volume. Her mother gently asked her to lower it. Once, twice, 4 times. On the 5th time, Saira snapped. She screamed an inhuman, guttural scream and hurled the plate at the glass door. It shattered. Her face turned ghost white. Her pupils expanded, black as tar. Then, in a voice not her own, she shouted at her mother, "Stop your nonsense, woman, or you will not survive this." She lunged, hands clawed, and it took 2 women to hold her back. They recited verses, trying to calm her. Slowly, she wept and returned to herself. But then she began to speak. She accused her mother of sorcery, of casting spells on her and blowing incantations into her food. Her voice shifted again, now the voices of 6 or 7 men overlapping. Then came laughter, deep and echoing. Her cousin tried to comfort her, only for Saira to turn, her face contorting, and growl, "My mother says I won't leave you." The room turned cold. They tied her to a chair with ropes. Her male relatives were called. A local scholar, known for spiritual healing, was contacted. He instructed them not to move her yet, just to recite God's names, just to wait. When they tried to transport her later, she broke the ropes, laughing, fighting, for grown men couldn't hold her down. Eventually, the healer instructed them to isolate the women and speak directly to the entity within her. When asked what it was, the voice replied, "I am a jinn out of your faith. Years ago, she preached under a tree where my family lived. Her sermons disturbed our home, so I took hers. She is mine now. If you try to force me out, she dies." They tried everything. Quranic verses, holy water, night after night. Screams filled the house. Glass shattered on its own. Furniture moved. She bit, clawed, cursed in tongues unknown to her. Eventually, the healer demanded she be brought to him. They took her to Malton. For months, spiritual treatment continued. Slowly, the darkness lifted. She came back, or so it seemed. Saira returned home. The violent outbursts stopped. The voices ended. But she remained the same, silent, locked away, her room unchanged, lit by the same red glow. She never spoke again, never used a phone, never left the house. Visitors often said they still felt something in the house. Some believed the jinn had left. Others believed it never did. That Saira had simply made peace with it. That a deal had been struck. And that now, something ancient and cold stared through her eyes, waiting.